Hello, hi everyone. Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a series where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're adding to our series on comically racist shit from TV and film with some inspiration from this Rush Hour 2 scene.
They will torture us for 3 days. I can handle that. Then they'll cut off our egg rolls. Cut off our egg rolls? Hell no, let's get the hell out of here.
Now, while arguably taken out of context, this particular scene doesn't actually feel all that problematic. The Rush Hour franchise has not particularly aged well over the last few decades with its general exploitation of both Black and Asian American stereotypes, most recently coming under fire when CBS tried and failed to reboot it a few years back. So, I thought I'd use my favorite scene from this movie as an opportunity to take a crack at a request that a few folks have been asking for now, which is the Chinese egg roll. Now, a lot of folks have also been asking what are the differences between the Chinese egg roll, a Filipino lumpia, and a Vietnamese spring roll, and after doing a whole bunch of research, I discovered that I honestly have no earthly idea. What we generally refer to as the Chinese American egg roll is actually made from wonton wrappers, giving it that super blistered exterior quality that you'll probably associate with the egg rolls you'll find at places like Panda Express. However, I've been making egg rolls with my family for my entire life, and I have never made an egg roll that looks like this. My family has always instead used a thinner pastry sheet, which you can see here is referred to as a spring roll lumpia wrapper, which just makes everything even more confusing. Is it a spring roll or a lumpia? I have no idea. What's most important to note though is that if you want those blistered puffy Panda Express style egg rolls, you should use either wonton wrappers or wrappers specifically labeled as egg roll wrappers. Then if you want thin flaky egg rolls, use lumpia wrappers. Finally, just to make things even more confusing, there are also the Vietnamese fresh spring rolls, which are made with rice sheets. Do not use these for any form of egg roll because they won't deep fry properly at all, and I would guess they would probably just melt. Okay, so let's get into it. So, kicking things off, I'm starting off as always with 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, followed by 1 tablespoon or about 1 inch of finely minced ginger. Then moving on to our veggies, an egg roll can contain any number of vegetables and fillings, including things like bean sprouts, vermicelli, shiitake mushrooms, and more. But for our version today though, I'm gonna go with some carrots, green onion, and cabbage, since they felt like the things most folks will be able to find themselves. For my carrots, I'm peeling these and then doing a fine julienne cut, which many of you may have noticed is my least favorite type of cut because they take forever. Moving on though, next up are my green onions, which I'm separating by whites and greens, then slicing up on a bias. The whites are gonna go into our wok fry in the par cook, but the greens will be tossed straight into our mixing bowl raw since they're a little bit more delicate. Moving on to my cabbage, I'm breaking out the 16-inch big boy knife here to chop this into quarters, then thinly slicing up about a quarter of it, giving it a wash and shaking out as much water as I possibly can. Finally, I'm whisking up a single egg for my egg wash, and we're moving on to our sauce. Now, for those of you who have been following along, our sauce today is borrowing pretty heavily from the P.F. Chang's mushu pork recipe that we did a few months back, since a mushu pork wrap is essentially just an egg roll without the deep fry. This is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce and 2 tablespoons of sesame oil to start, followed by a single tablespoon each of Shaoxing wine and rice vinegar for some brightness. Then next up are the heavy hitters in our umami game, which is 2 tablespoons each of oyster sauce for some fishy umami, and doubanjiang for some heat. Then I'm rounding everything out with a pinch of kosher salt to taste, and we're getting to work on our marinade. So, as with our veggies, an egg roll can contain any number of meats and proteins depending on what your fancy is. The Panda Express egg roll, I believe, uses ground chicken, and I know my family has always made this stuff using thinly sliced pork. Today though, I'm going to be using some ground pork as a sort of compromise, but use whatever you've got. I'm marinating this with 4 tablespoons of soy sauce and 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar to start, followed by my personal favorite, half a teaspoon each of white pepper and Chinese 5-spice. These are gonna give our egg rolls that really iconic aromatic flavor that you'll know from a lot of Chinese takeout. Then I'm rounding this out with half a teaspoon of cornstarch to keep the meat nice and tender in our wok fry, and we're ready for our par cook. Over on the stove, I've got my wok heated up as hot as possible, then I'm adding 4 tablespoons of peanut oil, and as always, long yao for your non-stick surface. I'm starting off with my garlic and ginger going in first, which I'm blooming until fragrant for about 10 seconds, then followed by my ground pork. We're giving this a toss for about 2 to 3 minutes until nice and browned up. Then I'm removing it from the wok, giving everything a wipe down and starting all over with our veggies. We're batch cooking here because there's quite a few ingredients to cook and we want to make sure that we don't end up with an underheated wok by overloading it with too many things. This is another 2 tablespoons of peanut oil going into our wok for our second long yao. Then I'm tossing in my carrots and the whites of my green onions. I'm giving this a toss for about a minute until tender, then followed by my cabbage and my ground pork coming back in. We don't need to reduce our cabbage too much here since we want it to stay fairly crispy, so I'm just adding my sauce about a 1/4 cup at a time, being careful not to over season at this point. Then finally, I'm removing all of this from my wok, adding the greens of my green onions, which I forgot to film somehow, then giving my wok one more wipe down and getting my fryer oil heated up to 350 F. While we wait for that to get going, I'm starting off by filling up my Lumpia spring roll flaky egg rolls here first. These things are crazy thin, so be very gentle at this point. I'm adding about 3 tablespoons of my filling here, then folding the first corner inward, followed by my outer 2 corners next. Then I'm taking my egg wash and giving the last corner a brush down before we seal things up. Then finally, I'm taking my finished egg roll and resting it with this egg-washed corner facing downward to make sure that it gets a good solid seal. I'm doing the same thing using my wonton wrappers here next for my puffy blistered Panda Express style egg rolls, but with just a single tablespoon of filling this time. These are going to be a little bit thicker and easier to manage, but be careful not to overfill them though, or else they will explode in the fryer. I'm repeating until all of my filling is used up, and we're heading over to the deep fry. Over on the stove, our fryer should be rolling at 350 F by now, so we're ready to fry. Now we're going to be employing the Kenji Lopez patented double fry method here for a super crunchy egg roll, so I'm adding my first batch in for just 1 minute until lightly golden, then removing and resting for 5 minutes. Once again, friendly reminder not to overfill your egg rolls or this will happen. I'm repeating the same thing with my smaller wonton egg rolls until everything has had a nice par fry. Then I'm adding them back to the wok for their second fry, this time for a full 3 to 5 minutes until golden brown. Remember to also pull these out about 30 seconds before they look done to account for carryover cook. This is going to take a few tries to get a feel for, so don't panic if you burn the first few. You'll notice here that my thinner pastry egg roll wrappers have a smoother and flaky texture, and our wonton wrappers have more of a blistered and puffy texture. The wonton wrappers are going to give us a little bit of a denser chew, and the thinner wrappers are going to be a little bit more flaky and crispy. Both are going to be equally as tasty depending on what your preference is. Finally, I'm serving this up with a side of sweet chili sauce, and we're ready to eat. Okay, so I've been making egg rolls with my family since I was a little kid, and I've been kind of looking forward to this recipe for a while because it's such an important part of my childhood for me. The process of making these things is such a big communal activity and just sort of brings me back to all of the big Chinese New Year gatherings that we had when I was a kid, catching up with my cousins and filling up on egg rolls before dinner. It might seem like a lot of work to put into an appetizer, but I'll be honest, that's kind of the point. These things are super addictive and easy to eat 5 of them without realizing it because they're nice and bite-sized. The par cook on the filling also gives the interior a nice independent flavor that stands on its own even without the dipping sauce. And if you've never had a freshly fried egg roll, it's a whole world different from the ones that come off the heating plates at restaurants. The one final insider tip that I'll give is that the broken egg rolls are actually always the tastiest ones in my opinion, because they have all of their nooks and crannies exposed during the deep fry, making them extra crispy or maybe just burnt, depending on how you look at it. Either way, if you've never eaten a broken egg roll, you're missing the best part. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot. This is a super fun one to do with the whole family, so if you're looking for something to do now that all of your friends and family are hopefully vaccinated, this is a good one to bring up. If you haven't yet, definitely check out some of the other recipes in our TV and film hack series. There are a lot of them now. Also, if you haven't yet, be sure to find your way over to the all-new woocancook.com for the written recipe, schedule of live streams and releases, new Woo Cooks, beats, tunes, and more. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe, be nice, and I'll see you soon.